Good morning, everyone. Hope you guys are doing well. My name is Joe Delagrave. I'm one of the captains for USAWR, and you're here joining me on the Captain's Chat today. I have three-time Paralympian Seth McBride with me, won gold in 2008, a bronze in 2012, and a silver in 2016 for the USA Wheelchair Rugby team. And Seth is a dad, a husband, and writes for New Mobility. So super excited to have Seth on the show. How's it going, man?
Good. How are you doing?
Yeah, not too bad at all. Not too bad. How you been doing? What's been going on in the whole COVID year to 2020?
Crazy, just like everyone else, I think. Yeah, we've been surviving, but it's been a year for sure. We're working full time, got a 3-year-old, and my wife Kelly, she works in a hospital, so has been working front lines of COVID, and we've been like in the middle of building a new house to go move about 60 miles from where we are right now to go live close to the family. So it's we've had a lot going on, but we're making it.
It's like everyone's had a crazy amount of stuff going on, and you throw a 3-year-old in the mix too. What has he said anything silly about? I know my kids always talk about the virus, and it's just normal now, but right away it's like, this is so weird that kids are talking about a virus. But has he said anything?
He's mostly he'll say stuff because we'll have to tell him we can't go do that, or we have to wear masks because everybody's getting sick, and he'll keep asking, is everybody still getting sick, or is that closed because people are sick still?
Yeah.
I mean, he's young enough that everything is just sort of whatever. This is how it is to him. But yeah, I'm sure it's affected him. He was getting mad the other day because the playgrounds are still closed.
Yeah, all relative for sure. Yeah, that's how kids have been after the coronavirus is over, then we're gonna do this, this, and this. And it's like, okay. But it seems like they bounce back a lot easier and a lot better than adults do. That's for sure.
Yeah, pretty much. I took a couple of months off. Well, not really off. I was working nights and weekends, but I was full time with him when daycare closed when the pandemic first hit. But
yeah,
he loved it. He was get to hang out with dad all day. We go on bike rides all the time. I don't have to go to school. This is great.
Yeah. Absolutely. What any crazy quarantine goals pop up through this whole thing? Obviously, building a house, that's a big one.
Biggest goals right now are going and traveling again once this is all over. We've been I think we've been so busy through quarantine and building a house that we're just at this point stoked to for things to settle out a little bit once that's all over and have some time to just go play on the weekends. And we've been doing a lot of mountain biking as a family, so I got a bike, and Kelly's got a seat where Ewan can ride basically shotgun on her bike. I'll go biking together as a family. So getting out and doing that more once things mellow out.
Yeah, for sure. I've seen a few pictures of the little guy sending it on some jumps, which is super cool to see.
We were out yesterday and we're about to go down the trail, and he'll yell. He'll be like, "Sending."
That's just awesome. That's super cool. Yeah, I guess the whole dad thing, and that whole thing happened for you right after you're done with rugby.
Yeah,
right.
It was just early into pregnancy when we went to Rio. So
yeah. It's crazy. What's the quad life like pre-dad versus post-dad? And you being pretty new to it. I don't remember my life before kids, but what's it been like?
Honestly, the biggest change is just the busyness. It's I always felt like I was busy pre-kids, but I was I had no idea how much actual time I had to do things that I wanted to do, or me time or whatever. Like that all disappears when you have a kid. And it was crazy because like I retired from rugby, started working full time right at basically the same time that Ewan came. So it was like full-time job and kid all at once. Yeah.
That's a life change for sure. After trying not to have a full-time job for so long, being an athlete and doing some crazy adventures that we'll get into later. But yeah, definitely a different way of life for sure.
Yeah. I mean, it's, like it's busy and it's crazy. It's like people always ask if it's the same as I thought or any different than I thought it was going to be. And it's like, it was way more busy and way more fun than I expected. Like even this young, like, they're just goons and have a blast doing everything. So it's kind of hard not to get like swept up into it and have fun right along with them.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Wait until they play sport. Yeah, for sure. My kids are just starting to play. Well, they've been playing sports for a while, but they're both playing flag football, and they're letting us do that since it's outside. We'll see how it goes, but I'm helping coach, which is kind of funny. Where the crippled dad out there trying to teach people how to play football. It's not bad. It's some kids are a little more athletic than others. And then our kids are like, hey, my birthday's in 5 days. I'm like, we're in the middle of a play right now. I don't really care. Yeah, cool. Yeah. So just a little bit like history of rugby and how you got started. Like when did you get hurt? When did you start playing rugby? How did that all start?
So I got hurt in 2001. I was like in between junior and senior year of high school. So I got started with rugby probably about maybe 2 years, a little bit more after I got hurt. I was going to school down at University of Oregon, go Ducks, down in Eugene, and was just like looking around for something active to do because, as a quad, especially like equipment has advanced so much, but there really wasn't that much to do. There was like you could do racing chair, hand cycling, or rugby, which I didn't really know about and found it online. And then saw there was a team in Portland, which about an hour and a half from Eugene. So there was a number on the website and gave a call, and it was Ed Sir, who coached for USA Rugby for a long time, assistant coach. And he had me come out to practice and sort of got hooked from there.
Yeah, crazy. Was it one of those things? I did the same thing because it was a lot of people like around our era were like, oh, I watched Murder Ball. You were a little bit before that. But then it was the same thing where I just kind of looked up sports and, oh, this might be cool. Like, what was that first practice like when you went and got to hit someone? And
it's interesting. It was a ton of fun. Like, it was really cool just hopping in the chair and feeling like what it was like to move in a chair that's set up to like turn and go fast and whatnot. But I remember like also being pissed that I just like wasn't very good and like it was going to be a struggle too. Like, and people were moving around. So it was cool to see like what people could do and it was fun to hit, but it was also like this realization like, oh, you can't just hop in this chair and be good at it right away. Like, it's going to take work.
Yeah, for sure. What was the first chair you jumped in?
It was this old blue. I don't even know if it had a manufacturer. It was like put together in somebody's garage.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was pretty janky. It was definitely a little bit of a trash can on wheels, but it's what they had sitting around in the gym. So that's what I got. And I played in that for probably like at least a season when I actually made it out to practice, or I was still doing the college guy life at that point. So it took a while to like actually get serious about it.
Yeah, for sure. What were you when you first started playing rugby? Like how was that a year, 2 years after your accident, or was it?
It was about 2 years. Yeah.
2 years. Okay. What were you pretty well? Were you pretty well like into your, like, being okay with being in a wheelchair pretty well, like, independent already, or how did rugby play a role in that?
I mean, I was pretty independent because I was just like super independent as a, as a teenager and whatnot. And I was like super stubborn about that. So like I kind of forced myself to have to get independent so I could leave for college. Because
Right.
college was about a year after I got hurt. And that was like this goal I had and sort of got myself there. But there was still stuff like I couldn't, if I fell out of my chair, like I couldn't get back up in it on my own. Like I had to have people help me. And like there was a lot of stuff I still like couldn't do. I was living in dorms, living or whatever, and had friends helping me with random stuff here and there. Like, like I definitely wouldn't have been doing my own laundry and stuff like that. But like I was functionally independent, but not very good at it. So
Okay.
rugby, I think, biggest help from rugby was like one, learning how people did things to be able to do things easier and take way less time. Um, and then just like the physical, like getting enough strength to be able to like push around campus to be able to get between classes and the 10-minute break or whatever, to not have to, be the guy
Yeah.
coming in class all the time or leaving early. Like, and getting back in my chair, like if I fell out, like learning how to do that was something from rugby, and that like opened up the world because you can actually go and be an idiot and try and do stuff, and like if you fall out of your chair, then whatever, you just get
Knowing you
back.
can get back at, yeah, for sure. For sure. I mean, like, and I always ask this question because I always think it's interesting to talk to like elite athletes about it. And, you play at the very top level of the sport and accomplished a lot in the sport. But I think from a rehabilitative instrument standpoint, it's very unique, in like adaptive sports can help heal a person and then help push them into that independent zone, or into areas of life that they didn't think they could do. How important is that? And have you seen it in your region up in Portland in the Northwest with guys?
Yeah, I mean it's huge. Like I think there's so many different aspects of rugby, and I think the elite level of the game is something that we all love and we love doing. But some of the coolest things about being involved in the sport is seeing people who come out to practice, like maybe we've been in a chair 10 years and still like don't know how to do things independently and whatnot. Then they come out to practice and like see guys hitting and doing stuff and start asking questions, like, oh, they see them getting into the rugby chair on their own. It's like, I didn't, they might have plenty of function to do it, but don't know how to transfer or do anything on their own. And it just starts the process of like, oh, what else can I do?
Yeah.
Once you see people doing like working for new mobility now, I see a lot more of the disability community than I did when I was just in the athlete world. And it's like athletes by far tend to be like, this is not always the case, but like on a whole, like tend to be way more independent and functional in their everyday lives compared to, other segments of the disability community. I think it's part of that, like, having other people around to show you, and just like people that tend to be, more physical and motivated about that sort of stuff too.
I see it. I think like the small niche elite athlete population, especially, I mean, and even smaller in the rugby community, and that elite athlete segment, like we kind of take it for granted that most of us are pretty like well adjusted and independent. Well, it took me a long time to become independent, but and then it's just not the norm. But I remember, I can't remember if you wrote it somewhere, if you said it, but I love using the quote, is it's like rugby is like the support group for people that don't like support groups type of thing. And it's so true, because it's built and set up like you're going to get made fun of, or people are going to push you into uncomfortable positions to make yourself a better athlete, but also like a better per member of society and more independent. And I remember at a nationals once, Ian Chan was like, "Hey, can you do Florida chair transfers?" And I'm like, "Yeah, for sure." He goes, okay, and pushes me out of my chair. And then it's like right there. He's like, all right, do one. So I ended up doing one. He's like, okay, well, now you passed the test type of thing. But that's our community. That's the support group that we're in for sure.
Well, and like, yeah, that's so true, the support group stuff, but also like with rugby, the travel, right? Because like,
yeah,
you have to travel to play the sport, like to go to tournaments and whatnot. So like that forces people out of their comfort zone so much, like, because most people, they can't afford to have people travel with them or whatnot. So you have to figure it out on your own, and you have people there that can help you, but like, yeah, it's definitely a lot easier to get through a rugby tournament if you don't have to be waiting around until 11 o'clock at night for somebody to get you into the shower or something.
Right. Or like, you're like, oh, well, I'll go to a rugby tournament and there'll be accessible rooms. No, like, the 0.5s or whatever are going to take those up. And then you figure out how to transfer into a tub and how to shower that way. And then like, well, no one's coming with me, so I can't haul all that luggage. So how can you be like as minimal as possible with your equipment that you need, and learning that way for sure. Oh yeah, noob.
What's up, newbie?
Yeah. Speaking of new dads, for sure. Well, it's 11:15, so it's time to play our first game of the day. So a little background on this is Seth and I used to play, when he was on the national team, we used to play college football on the Xbox, where I dominate with the Badgers against
tight end. Can't stop the tight end.
Exactly. And then in real life, I feel like the Ducks and the Badgers played in like 15-year-olds balls. I think it was like 2 or 3, but it seemed like they break my heart every time, including this last year where it was one of the best. 28-27, I think, ended up being where the Ducks won. And now that people are coming out, cousin Tina.
Hi, Tina.
Yeah. So that's kind of the background. So I'm going to throw a little trivia at you with the Oregon Ducks. So the first question is, can you name 5 current NFL players that played for the Ducks? 5.
Let's start with the easy one. Justin Herbert.
Yep.
Mariota's
still in the league.
Is Chung still in the league?
Yes, he is.
Chung's still in the league. Let's see. What is running back? Royce Freeman.
Yes. Yep.
Still in the league. Bird probably isn't. Oh man, I know there's more. There's linemen. Oh, Eric Armstead and DeForest Buckner.
Yep, Eric Armstead and Buckner. I think I did. Yep. Wow, that was good. Yeah, exactly. Back when Hannaford was on, and he's obviously a big Seahawks fan, and completely choked on the show. Wasn't good. Was not good. That was I like Herbert, Mariota, and then from there as like a non-Ducks fan, I'm like, who are these guys? There's no way.
There's been a lot of defensive guys, surprisingly. Yeah.
Question number 2 is, how many Heisman Trophy winners has there been for the Oregon Ducks?
1.
Yes, there is. And
1. Yeah.
Yep. And who's that?
Mariota.
Yes, there was. Yeah. I was looking that up, and I didn't realize that there's only 1.
There've been like a few that had gotten close, like finalists, but
Michael James and
Joey Harrington.
Good old Harrington for sure. Only 1, which is crazy. Last question: how many Rose Bowls have the Ducks been in? Rose Bowls. This is a tough one. Only true Ducks fans would know this.
I feel like it's been a lot recently, but before that it was maybe like 1. So I'm gonna say 4 or 5. 4. I'll say 4.
Actually, been 8 if you include the semifinal back in 2015. That was technically Rose Bowl. Otherwise, 7. Their most recent one was the loss of the Badgers, unfortunately, in January 1st of 2020. So they started their 2020 year off absolutely right. And their first one was back in 1917. They won 14-0 against the Penn Quakers.
14-0. Exciting game.
Yeah. Pretty awesome. Well, Hannaford, he didn't choke like you, but might have to have you back on the show just to give you another chance with the Seahawks since you choked so bad. But hey, someone's got to set the bar down low. Yeah, a lot of Titan fans don't like Mariota anymore.
Vrabel, ew.
Vrabel's like, yeah, I don't need you anymore, man. Yeah, for sure. All right, well, back to the regular scheduled program here. I want to talk a little bit before we get more into your rugby career. Talk a little bit about something you and Kelly did, which is super fascinating, and it was called The Long Road South. That you guys had like your blog about biking from Portland, Oregon, down to all the way down to Patagonia. Is that how you say it? Yeah.
Yep. Waya is the town we finished in. Yeah.
Okay. Tell me about like what started that. I think there's a lot of people that will sit around, have a beer, maybe have some whiskey and be like, I really want to do this. Well, you guys did that and then like actually went through with it and traveled. Yeah. Tell me about the genesis of like how that all came about.
Well, it's pretty much exactly that. Like it started like the very first idea of it came when I was at college and like would go wandering around with my best friend, like, you know, drinking in the middle of the night, like talking about all the cool stuff we wanted to do. And I remember like being like, I'm going to ride my hand cycle around the world. And like, you know, just drunken college kids. And
yeah,
it sounded like a great idea because at that point I was a couple of years removed from injury and like hand cycling was about the only thing I knew how to do. So it seemed like a good idea, but I just love traveling and I didn't want it to become one of those like shoulda, woulda, coulda things. Like I always wanted to do some sort of big adventure and didn't really know how to make it happen until Kelly came along. And then started dating Kelly, and she's super adventurous too, and also ridiculously strong.
Ridiculously strong, yeah.
Yeah, like she, you know, she will piggyback me around. Like when we're after Beijing, she piggybacked me around the Great Wall of China, like she was wearing a little backpack. So having her around definitely helped, and just her sense of adventure. Like we started thinking about doing bike touring stuff and like tried this bike tour from our house in Portland back in like 2007, 2006, something like that. And I was carrying a bunch of weight, like did a normal weight distribution and like I couldn't go anywhere.
Yeah.
Like I was riding up hills and like having to stop like every 2 feet, like arms dying. And like we made it barely out of the city before we had to like call in the reinforcements. And so after that, once we realized like if we gave Kelly all the weight and then it would slow her down enough that I could actually try and keep up a little bit.
Yeah.
But we just sort of started small. Like we did a couple of small tours around Oregon, and it was like, super tough and physically challenging, but we had a ton of fun. And after that, like after the Beijing games, I took 2009 off from rugby and we wanted to do something bigger. So we took a month and went over to Ireland and rode our bikes around Ireland. And we chose Ireland because we figured you couldn't get more than 10 kilometers from a pub. So we'd always have stopping opportunities if we needed them.
Yeah.
and we just had a blast with that. When we got back, I remember we were landing in Portland after that trip, and we both sort of looked at each other and we're like, we don't want this to be over right now. And like, you want to do something bigger? You want to take a year and go ride somewhere? And she's like, yeah. So it just sort of something we wanted to do, but then it took like years of planning to make it happen. So sort of at that point, I thought London was going to be my last rugby hurrah for Paralympics, and decided to set the goal of making the trip happen like after I retired after the London games. And so we just sort of set our minds to it and spent a couple of years planning and saving up money and decided to just make it happen.
It's crazy. Yeah. And it happens. And yeah, a crazy thing to just follow along with, and kind of like from the crippled community, being able to kind of point to it with pride and go, I'm like, this is someone in our community that's doing this. And of course, you know, Kelly and her ridiculously AB strength with, what did she carry, like 70 pounds on her bike or something like that? Or like what?
No, she was carrying a full-size human. Like we put it on, sorry. There we go. A couple of times we had to fly, we put it on the airline baggage scales, and like without water, she was carrying about like 160 pounds on her bike. Yeah.
Insane. Wow. After all of that year-long thing, the years of planning it, and then you're done. I mean, was it was it a little depressing to be done? Was it like you guys are ready to be done? What'd you learn from it? Like how was the mindset after?
Afterwards was weird because it was like we weren't done with the riding. We were still having tons of fun, like riding and doing that. What we were really done with is the packing up camp every day over and over and over again, because it was like 2 hours in the morning, like from when we woke up to when we could be pedaling out to, like, you know, do the pack up and pack our bikes back up, eat breakfast, like, and then it was, you know, a couple hours every night, like when you stop wherever, like on the side of the road somewhere, and get everything unloaded, set tents up, like,
yeah,
cook dinner, like, so, you know, there's 4 hours out of your day that's just like packing and unpacking every single day. And it was like, we were definitely done with that. We were stoked to go back and like have all our stuff be in the same place.
Yeah.
For a while.
Yeah.
But, so, you know, like any big thing like that, it was definitely bittersweet. Like we were still having a blast doing it, but we were also ready to be back and, you know, be back in normal life a little bit.
Was there any like big lesson learned? I mean, like you go, you do it, check it off the list, great. But like, I feel like doing something so big, is there a takeaway? Is there a philosophical takeaway from the whole trip? Or
my biggest lesson learned was that a couple of them, I guess. One is that your body can always handle more than you think it can if you don't have another choice. So like, you know, training for rugby is like super tough, and like you have to push yourself through all sorts of stuff. But at the end of the day, like if you stop your workout, you're still going to have a place to sleep. You're still going to have food to eat.
Yeah.
But out on the bikes, like if I'm having a bad day, like if, you know, my body's not cooperating, I just don't want to be on the bike, like I'm struggling super bad, like doesn't really matter because I still got to get to the next town.
Yeah.
To get water and food. Like, so yeah, it was just how strong your body can be when it doesn't have another choice was a big takeaway. And then, you know, along with that, like realizing that like the limits of independence and stuff are often like not what you can or can't do, but how much effort you're willing to put in. So there's like, you know, some things that I can do that, you know, technically I can do, but is it worth the effort to spend like hours every day? Like,
Yeah.
I could live in an inaccessible house and get up and down the stairs if I wanted to, but is that worth it to me? No.
Yeah.
So a lot of it is that sort of mindset stuff of like, you're as strong as you want to be, but being willing to like say, okay, there are things like, with my body that it's okay if I don't want to do all the time, or I don't have to be like, super independent or like, do everything on my own because, I think lots of times when you're in the like learning how to live with a disability after you first get hurt, like you want to do everything and you feel terrible. Like if your body's telling you no, that this is dumb or not a good idea. Right.
Have you ever, has that backfired ever when Kelly's like, listen, you big jerk, you've biked across 2 continents. I need you to do this for me. Has it ever came back to bit you in the?
Yeah, no sympathy. Doesn't happen very often, but like our house right now, we our only laundry is downstairs in the basement, and we don't have. Where'd you go?
I swiped the wrong way. Not my internet at the time, guys. I swiped the wrong way. Actually, I had to update my modem for this show. Anyway.
So there's definitely been times where she's made me bump myself down the stairs to help her out with the laundry. She's like, you can get down there. You'll be fine.
I can just hear Kelly say that to you. That's hilarious. So talking a little bit about your rugby career, obviously starting out and playing in that big blue chair, whatever you're playing in, starting out, and then like when did you realize, hey, maybe I can make a team, maybe I can make it to this next level? What year was that?
Probably like maybe 2004, 2005 is when I first. Probably 2004 is when I started to take it seriously enough that it was something I wanted to do and wanted to get good at. And part of that was just being around Ed Sir and Will Grew were both on my local team at the time, and Will went to the Athens games and came back from that. And so he had seen the elite levels of the sport and sort of brought that knowledge back to practice or whatever. And so being around playing local team and, we went to nationals, I think probably still D2 at that point that year. And I got to see a little bit more of the higher levels of the sport through national, watching the D1 games or whatever. And, Will sort of tell me, it was like, you could be good at this if you are willing to work at it. And sort of that's kind of what changed the mindset to be like, is this important enough? And yes, it is. And okay, now what do I need to do to actually get good at it?
Yeah. So it sounds like you had Ed there as a mentor, Will there as well as kind of an example of like, hey, I've been here, and then you can do this. And so what year was your first team? 2005?
Yep. So we had the developmental team in 2005 that
going to Brazil.
Yeah. Rio. Gumby's first year as coach too, on that developmental team, and playing in this like Navy gym with floorboards that you could catch air off of because they were so warped. And
Awesome. So make that first team, and then 2006 rolls around, end up making the world championship team.
Yeah,
and that kind of started a process of you're part of one of the most successful runs in the sport's history, 06 to 2010. Tell us a little bit about that. Like, so Worlds and then moving into Beijing when that's the last gold medal that the U.S. has won. And would love to pick your brain about what that team had that maybe other teams didn't, and how the U.S. can kind of get back to that spot. But anyway, start with 2006 and in that world championship team.
Yeah, I mean, the cool thing about being a young guy coming into the team at that time is just like the amount of knowledge, rugby knowledge that was on the team at that point, and the level of experience. Like, coming in, Scott, Hogstead, Norm was playing, Zupan, Brian, Andy Cohn. Will was still somewhat of a young guy on the team at that point. So there was just Steve Pate, who obviously been around forever. That was his last year with the team, but there was just so much rugby knowledge, and coming into, a group of guys that had been around together, been through it, and been through losing, and were, absolutely determined to not let that happen again. It was just a great culture to be around, and sort of, it was just this sort of mindset that whatever you have to do, we're not losing. And it was just a bunch of, it was a whole team full of alphas at that point. So it was like a super brutal environment to come into. Like, you couldn't be afraid to get yelled at and whatnot. And, if you're doing something wrong, people are going to tell you about it. But if you could handle it, it also made you a whole lot better at rugby, and a whole lot more resilient in some of those tough game situations.
Yeah.
You'd already been through it at practice, 900 times by the time you got to a game.
Yeah. So that mentality takes you guys through. You end up playing New Zealand in the championship, right? And the Worlds, winning, which was, I think, one of the few games that there wasn't a turnover by you guys. I'm pretty sure.
I had the only half turnover. I got a jump ball. Dan Buckingham got a jump ball on me.
Half turnover. Okay, so it was a no hitter, not a perfect game type of thing.
Yep.
Okay, fair enough. End up winning. So the important thing, win the Worlds, 2006, and then gives you the momentum to go into 2008 Beijing Paralympics. Tell us about that.
I mean, Beijing was awesome because I had never been to, obviously, Paralympics before. I never played anything like that. From World Championships is one thing, but like Paralympics is just such an order of magnitude higher in terms of the hype surrounding it, the level of like interest, the amount of fans, so it was a really cool environment to be at, and China was crazy just because the amount of resources and people they pumped into those games is their sort of big coming out party to the world. So it was an awesome environment to be in, and the rugby was, a ton of fun. There was a bunch of teams that were like all could have made the podium, and so from 1 through 6 basically it was all a super tight battle. New Zealand didn't make the top crossover, but they probably could have been on the podium. They, I think, lost 2 games by 1 point or whatever to Australian GB. So it was a ton of fun, and we had, at that point, there was, a couple of lineups that we knew were the sort of our core lineups, but everybody had a role to play. Like, I was still a role player at that point and got in my minutes when I could or whatever, but it was cool because there was a lot of trust on the team. So even if you only went in for, 4 or 5 minutes, those could be, right in key moments of the game or whatever. And so it was a pretty awesome environment to be in. And I don't know, it's just at that point, like, winning was sort of the standard. It took a while, it took until London before we lost. So it was just kind of, we never expected anything less, but it didn't make getting to the top of that mountain any less sweet, like it was still an incredible experience. Like, being on top of that podium hearing the national anthem is like nothing else.
Yeah. You say something about like knowing your role, and 2010, that was, we called it Joe time. When it was, up 20, down 20, last goal scenario, whatever it would be. But and that was something that I took seriously. And as far as like that winning mentality and winning gold in Beijing, how important is that to a team's culture? Being able to know what your role is and doing it well, whether that's playing 2 minutes or 20 minutes.
I think it's huge, and it's something that even after Beijing, like it took me a long time to learn really to internalize the importance of that. That like it really doesn't matter how many minutes you're playing. It's about giving, giving everything you've got and knowing what you can do to help your team out on the minutes that you are in. And it's all that little stuff makes a huge difference, especially at the elite levels of the game. Like if you have a lineup that all they do is come in for 2 minutes to kill clock in certain situations, like that can mean the difference between winning and losing. So even if you're only getting in for a little bit of time, like who cares? You're helping your team. Like,
yeah, for sure. For sure. What do you think the most important lesson you've learned from your whole career and a successful career? Three Paralympics, 2 world championships, a gold medal. Yeah, the whole podium, gold, silver, and bronze. But yeah, like what lessons have you learned? What are you hoping that maybe down the line you'll be able to use some of those lessons with being a dad or with your job?
I mean, biggest ones, like especially with rugby, like talent and function don't really mean anything. Function, like it can be a prerequisite sometimes for depending on your classification, but like talent doesn't mean anything if you're not willing to work.
Yeah.
And any of the guys that you see that get up to the high levels of the sport and especially stay at the high levels of the sport, it's because they're self-motivated and willing to work outside of the structures of the game, like outside of practice, outside of tournaments and actually competing. They're the guys that are waking up and doing it on their own. And so that's definitely something that I picked up early and saw, like the times that I was slacking off on when I could have been doing more, like it shows up in your play, and
Yeah.
you don't have anybody to blame but yourself for that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So that's a good lesson for being a dad, because little kids love to complain about things. So
Yeah.
imparting like just the importance of hard work and being able to work harder than other people is huge.
Yeah.
Probably the biggest one. Otherwise, yeah, I think, like you've talked, been a good part of like team stuff, like with team sports, like remembering that they're control what you can control, and it's not about you, it's about the team.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. What's tips for maybe an athlete that wants to get involved? Kind of piggybacking on that, I think you're a good person to ask. Like, you're not overly big at all, right? And like levers in this sport, you didn't have Will Grew levers or length like me, and so you literally had to chop your way through getting fast and dialing in your body and figuring out what you could get the most out of. Like, and obviously those are good tips. What's probably the number one thing that you did better than maybe other people that had like average sized bodies, it wasn't like this crazy body built for rugby? Like what did you do that maybe other people weren't willing to do, or what kind of tips would you have for that athlete coming in?
I mean, what I did, and the tip I'd have for other people, is learn your body, learn your strengths and weaknesses. Like I sort of learned right from the start, like you're saying, like I grew up in the sport around Will. and he was always faster than me top end because he had these, he worked his ass off and had,
Yeah.
had that level of like elite sort of fitness and whatnot, but he also had these ridiculously long arms that, definitely help when you're pushing your chair. So it was probably, I had gotten faster, gotten better at the sport, for a while. And then after 2008, I sort of started trying to figure out how I could get faster because I got tired of Will blowing by me in practice all the time. And I knew that I was never going to be faster than him if I pushed like him.
Yeah.
And so I sort of figured out that, strength and putting power into your pushes and then using your spoke guards as gearing. So pushing farther down the wheels and starting up high, but moving your hands systematically down the wheels as you got going, that I didn't have to have the same sort of wingspan to get up to a high speed if I move my hands down the wheel and have the strength to be able to, get them going down there.
Yeah.
So that's sort of what really helped increase my speed. And then realized once I started getting stronger and realized, how helpful it was just sort of dialing that in and being willing to try different things, whether it was like, plyometric kind of lifting, like throwing weights around and, putting weights on my chair and doing really explosive stuff in my chair with, 50-pound weight on my foot plate or whatever, like to really dial in that stuff. So when you get on the court without any of that stuff on, you can really be more explosive and more powerful and ultimately quicker in your movements. So I think, learning your body, being willing to be creative, and sort of think about what works for you and how you can, so much of the sport is, everybody's body is different. So being able to dial in your setup, all that sort of stuff, every little thing makes a big difference.
Yeah. Well, as we get wrapped up, I got a couple of rapid fire questions for you, but before that, what's your favorite moment in club rugby? What's your favorite moment for USA?
Oh man. Club rugby is easy. When we finally won the national championship.
After being the Buffalo Bills rugby for
been a long time as the Bills. Like, we had been working so hard for it for so long to finally get over it and win the championship game was huge and a relief as much as anything, But,
yeah.
And then, I was thinking about this like favorite USA moment, and there's a lot. Like, Beijing obviously is, hard to beat. Like, winning gold medal is amazing. But one game that I think of as like being one of the most fun I played in, and you were there for this, is 2010 World Championships when we were playing Canada, last game of pool play.
Yep.
And it was a meaningless game. It didn't mean anything. We had already locked up first place in the pool play, and Canada was fighting for their lives to stay to make the top crossover at their home tournament. So great environment, super tight game. We was like 1 point, we were behind most of the game, like right there, but you knew like we were right in it. And I remember going in like to go inbound to third or fourth quarter, and it was like, you could feel the like intensity and the sort of pressure in the stands in the stadium and on the sidelines and people watching. I remember just smiling going to inbound and like thinking to myself, like, this is awesome. This is so fun. Like, I'm just having a blast right now. Like, this is exactly why I play the sport.
Yeah, absolutely.
And we ended up pulling it off and sending Canada into the lower crossovers, which only makes things sweeter.
It's I was talking to Trevor the other day on the show, and it's kind of like when our sweetest moments are like Canada's worst and vice versa. And I remember that one's probably up there on the top Canadian wins, beating them in their home crowd. And the crowd was pretty. There was a beer garden rolling, so plenty of drunk Canadian fans screaming at us, and then we had a couple of our USA fans as well. So, yeah,
very extra loud and obnoxious. Yeah,
that was awesome. Yeah, great answer. Well, let's do a little rapid fire wrap up, where we get to know Seth McBride a little bit. First one: if you could be any animal, what would it be? Any animal. What's your spirit animal?
Koala bear.
Koala. Okay. All right. Can be a little feisty. Kind of wants to stick to himself. You've had a lot of like bucket list items that you've done before. Like, what's another item on the bucket list?
Oh man. I would love to go take a camper van around Europe with a bike and go do some of the Tour de France climbs.
Wow, that'd be pretty sweet.
Yeah.
And extremely hard. I was thinking like a McBride's in Madagascar show or something like that. You, Kelly, and the little man.
Oh, we'd be really grumpy with cameras in our face all the time.
That's hilarious. What's your favorite summer activity?
Now mountain biking for sure. Yeah, getting out in the woods and going fast.
Sleep 2200. Like a quality. Yeah, mountain biking for sure. And let's see. Flavor of ice cream.
Ooh, mint chocolate chip.
All right. What book are you reading right now?
The Tiger.
I knew there was going to be a book there.
It's about this tiger that goes and hunts down a poacher in Siberia and kills them with maximum vengeance. Non-fiction. Fascinating.
Yeah, that's fantastic. What is your biggest addiction?
Sleep.
Oh, nice. Yeah, that's a great addiction. How many books have you read so far this year? That's a good question. It's almost October.
Not many, actually. Only reading time is bedtime, so it's hard to get through more than 4. I'm probably on number 3 or 4.
Okay. Oh, that's like Joe level right there.
That's not great.
Full-time job and a kid, and gosh.
Well, if you count kids' books, we're at like 1,000. But
do you guys have any guilty pleasure TV shows you watch?
Grand Designs is this like funny British architecture show, people building their own houses and wanting to rip each other's heads off because things aren't going right. Yeah.
What 2 things do you have on a tropical island? If you're stranded there.
Tropical island?
Yeah, you're stranded on there.
Are we talking things or people?
Things, yeah.
Whiskey and tortilla chips.
That's fantastic. If you would have went person, Kelly would have been on there with you. Yeah.
Not you, Joe. Sorry.
Comes in handy. No, you need someone that's handy. You need someone that can do something for your function. What is the longest consecutive time you've spent in a car?
Oh man. Probably. So I did a drive with a friend from Seattle to Haines, Alaska in one stretch. I think we were in the car for 36 hours, and we only stopped for like 3 hours in a gas station parking lot waiting for it to open. So
good God. Wow. Last one. Where did it go? Right there. All right. So if you could jump in a time machine, where would you go and why?
Man. I don't know. I feel like I'd like to go see like something random like the Middle Ages or something, but I'd probably end up dead. So it's probably not the best idea.
Yeah. Yeah. You have to like prerequisite with like, am I going to die in this or not? Yeah, for sure. For sure. Well, Seth, thank you so much for being on the show. You want to check out more of Seth and what he does, you can check him out at Wandering Arms on the gram, over at Seth MCB on Twitter. And then he has a lot of his writings on newmobility.com where he works full time. So thank you guys for watching. As always, check out more information at usawr.org and check out USAWR on Instagram and at USAWCH Rugby on Twitter. Seth, thanks so much for being on, man. Appreciate it.
All right. Thanks, Joe. Have a good